How about Exodus? Anybody throughout the week been thinking through the Exodus narrative, what we talked about last week? Come to any realizations that you hadn't before, or have questions about before we begin moving on? Yeah.
I remember, this is my own study. I remember reading Exodus. We had the basket reference when we talked about the Noah's Ark. The basket meaning as far as the ark. So
don't give that away yet.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
So I remember we were talking about the ark.
Yeah.
In Genesis, meaning it's a basket, things like that. So
Yeah.
I didn't give too much right.
Yeah.
So
somebody recap something that you learned last week through our opening session. Yeah.
I don't know about last week, but when I was reading this, I keep noticing the I don't know what the term would be, where he's an Egyptian, but he's a Hebrew.
Yeah.
He never forgets that he's
Yes.
a Hebrew. His mother, he was around someone who taught him. So he
Yeah.
he always identified as Hebrew.
Yep.
But so he's a Hebrew, people live in Egypt, and he leaves Egypt, he goes into the land of Midian.
Yep. Don't give that away yet either.
But there he's
Yep.
as an Egyptian.
Mhm.
So it's such a
Yep.
like I think he's sure of who he is, but are the others? I mean, it's a conflict. It keeps coming.
That's good.
Face to face.
That's great. That's exactly what you're supposed to be feeling. We're going on an identity crisis right now, which is going to be really important because if you recall, what Moses is doing is in his micro picture way, he's going to be performing what will happen to Israel or the Hebrews as a whole. The whole first portion of Exodus. This, by the way, I know some people are taking pictures of this. This is the Bible Project's book overview of it. They provide these things for free. In fact, they do a whole video that explains the whole thing, so you can go to YouTube and just search Exodus Bible Project. But this kind of shows a really good breakdown of like how the book is split up. It's definitely a two-part book, and so the first half almost doesn't even relate to the second half. It's almost like the second half you could read in a completely different scroll. But it's important to see that for reasons once we get to later on. And so we're kind of in that first movement of Exodus here. And in the first opening scenes of Exodus, we're seeing Moses is going to be going through his own version of the Exodus before he will eventually do that. And we'll see that going a little deeper here shortly. But last week we discovered the setting and kind of what's going on with the opening scenes here. So where do we find the opening narrative taking place? Egypt. Yep. And what's the conflict here? What's the big issues?
The Egyptians are worried about, the Earth is worried about the Israelites taking.
Yep. And so they have kind of he's got kind of a two-part fix to that. What was Pharaoh's two-part fix to making sure that the Hebrews aren't going to grow strong and mighty and join their enemies to fight against him?
Kill the baby boys.
Yeah. Yep. Kill the baby boys.
and let the girls live.
Yep. Let the girls live. Working to death was a portion of a part, so I guess it's kind of a three-part system. But put them to heavy work, heavy labor, and then we're going to try to kill the baby boys. Once during birth, and the other, how's the other going to happen? So the midwives were called to go and kill the babies if they saw it as a male. What was the other way? Yeah, throw them in the river, right? So these are all popular scenes. We've known this story a million times. Many of you have seen the Charlton Heston, is that what it is? Charlton Heston movie, Let My People Go. So you've got pretty good reference. Anybody go home and watch The Prince of Egypt yet? Did you like it? Is it pretty good? Yeah, pretty good. It's a cartoon, but it's pretty good. Okay. Okay. Anybody remember what was ironic about what Pharaoh was afraid of and his fix to this whole situation? Yeah, and that theme is going to continue, right? One of the other major things that we noticed in the first opening chapter is there's not a lot of people named, not a ton of characters named. There's two midwives that are named, and other than that, which Pharaoh is it? No idea. We really don't know too much about the naming, and that's going to continue on here in the second chapter. What I want to do.
Speaking of naming,
Yeah.
So the opening line here, he was, it doesn't say who his dad was, or who his mom was.
Mm-hmm.
Do we not know the lineage?
We're not. Well, we do. We know. Yeah, we know his lineage. We'll find out later. But it's purposeful. We're not finding out yet. And so what we see is what we're going to see here. Well, let's just start to read. We're going to be in chapter 2. We're going to read verses 1, and we're going to read through verse 10. Would somebody read that out for me? Tough crowd tonight.
The bride of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds among the bank of the Nile. His sister stood a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water."
Okay, so what stood out to you as we start to dive into this? Or did anything stand out to you?
That Pharaoh's daughter was the one that did.
Mm-hmm. So thinking through that theme that we started seeing in the first opening chapter is he's afraid of the men, not just any men, the men belonging to the Hebrews. Meanwhile, the women of the Hebrews are somehow working against him, and now what we see is joining the women of the Hebrews in working against him is now his own seed, right? Pharaoh's daughter, his own seed. So all the time, he's afraid of these foreigners, these foreign people. He's afraid that they are going to join forces with his enemy, and that enemy is going to rise up, and it'll be his downfall. Or at least Egypt's downfall. The ironic part is he's not wrong. Because what will happen is the Hebrews will join Pharaoh's enemy, is what we're going to discover, and it will ultimately be his downfall. It's just, who is this enemy? Is it the Hebrew people? Is it the foreign nations? Well, we're going to find out. Right now, it's the women. He just doesn't know it, right? Some of his own kin. Anything else stand out?
Well, kind of like what Scott said, they didn't name whose parents were. They just said Levi and a Levite.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so there's purposely nobody named particularly here. So that's going to be important. Until the end of what you read, and we're going to get the first break in that pattern. Yeah?
But the Levi was a tribe of priests.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he goes to Midian, he's going to meet the daughter of a priest.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
idea of priest.
Yes, that is a good catch too. That's going to be a theme all throughout, especially moving into the second half of the book. And so when you start to pay attention to the priest, if you're looking for like priest-like instances, you're going to start to see them pop up in certain ways. It'll really come into play once we get out to Sinai with Moses. Okay, so we're given the first name. Now, Brother Kane kind of brought this up. We talked about this back in the Genesis narrative, but what is it that he is placed in? A basket. However, that word basket, if you're looking at the Step Bible, which you're definitely not going to be able to read that, is the word tevah. Tevah is only used 2 times in all of the Bible, and it is describing the ark that Noah's going to build and the basket that Moses' mom builds. Right, that's going to be a hint. Many times, the author is constantly going to be winking back to many of these narratives. We've already seen a tie back to Genesis in the opening statements in Exodus. Anybody remember what the opening statements were that tied back to the Genesis narrative? regarding the Hebrew people?
And they multiplied?
Yes, right. Exodus chapter 1, what we see is the Hebrew people begin to multiply, and here's what's actually really funny. It describes them in two ways. They begin to multiply. Anybody else see what else the other one is? Say it again. Actually, it's four ways, I should say. Verse 7, the people of Israel were fruitful, increased greatly, and multiplied, and grew exceedingly strong. In fact, the word fruitful there, let me just go back to it if I can get to it. The word fruitful in verse 7, if you click on it, oh wait, no, it's down, it's a little bit further. It's the word that is described in multiplying is the word that is used in Genesis chapter 1 for how when God created the fish in the sea, he made the fish multiply in the sea, swarmed in the sea. And so the word that's going to be used to describe the Hebrew people are like the fish swarming in the sea. That's ironic because something else will eventually be swarming in the sea, and it will not be the Hebrew people. So that's a little. Whoever thinks God doesn't have a sense of humor, it's just little things like that. It's just hilarious. So we've got the Hebrew people are swarming in the land of Egypt. We've got Pharaoh's daughter, his own seed, is going to see the baby and take the baby out. We got his mom who is going to build an ark, a basket. It's going to go floating down the river. We are going to also be giving a foreshadowing, not only in the fact that he's floating in a river, but we're given a foreshadow that will also tie to later on during the Exodus narrative here, that we're not necessarily going to pick up in English. It gives us a very specific descriptive term to where the basket ends up. Any idea what that descriptive term in chapter 2 was?
Close to the riverbanks.
In the reed.
There you go, in the reeds. Now, so we have a baby who's floating down the river and he's in the reeds. Where is it that the Exodus, the big massive Exodus portion takes place, where they're walking across on dry land? Yeah. So our Bible calls it the Red Sea. That's an interpretive thing where they believe this probably happened. It probably did happen in the Red Sea. There's a couple places that it could have happened, but it's definitely an interpretive situation because that sea was not named the Red Sea back then. But what happens is we're given a descriptive term for the Red Sea called the Sea of Reeds. And so what happens is we've got a baby who's going in a basket in the river of reeds, and later the Israelites will walk across, and Pharaoh will find his death in the Sea of Reeds. So you're seeing a kind of a parallel bookend that will take place starting here, and what we'll see when the Israelites cross the Red Sea.
With the water being chaos, the ark protected them from the water, the chaos. The baskets protected chaos. Part of the Red Sea protected them from the chaos.
Yep. And if you think about so we're clearly tying the Moses basket to the ark. Is there anything else in the descriptive nature of the ark that ties it back to the Noah narrative as well? Yeah, so we're pitching it, right? We're putting pitch in this basket. All of that goes back to the Noah narrative. Now, the reason what you discover is when you start to look at those two narratives together. My question is, where is the information coming from for Noah's narrative to build this ark and to use pitch to cover it? Where's that information coming from? Right. So what you're supposed to do as a reader is you're supposed to see now Moses' mom is doing something. There's no speaking, no divine instruction, but she's completing the same thing that ultimately was divine instruction to somebody one book before. And so what you're supposed to be left with is, well, is this on man's account? Is this on the woman's account? Is this on God's account? Of course, we know, we're privy to knowing the story, so we obviously know that God had been working from the beginning. Remember, the theme is throughout the Joseph narrative, which closed off the end of Genesis, the theme was he forgotten? Had they forgotten? Did his brothers forget Joseph? Did God forget Joseph while he was in the tomb, while he was in the pit, while he was in prison? Did God forget him? And then, of course, you find out that God remembers him, and you celebrate. And then at the very end of Genesis, the last statement was Joseph had been forgotten in a tomb in Egypt. Now we fast forward 400 years. This is a continuation of that story. It's meant to be right. You're supposed to continue reading. Now you're going, well, did God forget his people? And now that you've been through this whole kind of test scene with the Joseph narrative, you're going through the same thing again. Is God remembering them? Is God forgetting them? Is he going to do the same thing? Is God at work? And you're seeing all of these women who are going to disobey ultimately in their own way Pharaoh's own orders, and that will lead to obviously the great intercessor who is Moses. And at the end of this, you'll obviously go, well, no, God was there the whole time. He was working. He obviously, was, and those who remained attached and connected to him, those who chose to go off of the wisdom of God versus the decrees of man, are going to lead to life, freedom, new life, all of that. And so these are all themes, multiple themes, all coinciding, all in the same exact same passages. Any other questions about that? One thing we skipped over was there's another little term describing Moses when he is born. What was this term? That's
What you mean by
fine child, right? So this is that's interesting. So is he good looking? He's a mom. Like many of you guys have been moms in the past. Had you ever looked at your newborn baby and went, ugh, that thing is ugly? I don't think that's in your nature. I don't know, maybe you can, but I can't. I'm like, it could be disgusting. And you're like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, right? So why do you think that should stand out? That should stand out. Why do you think, or what could we do to figure out why that stands out?
Could be the way, I'll get it out in a minute.
Yeah.
But, he probably looks strong and,
Okay.
in other words, healthy.
Okay. So he's a big fat baby?
He's gonna grow up to be a fine young man.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there something we could do to figure out? Did anybody else's translation say something different other than a fine?
Special.
Special. Beautiful. Okay.
The Step Bible is saying good, pleasant, agreeable.
Ah, good job,
That's
Miss
reading
Jane.
it, though.
So if you click on that lovely description of this baby, what you see is the word. Anybody want to take a stab at the word? I know, probably can't see that, but tov. Anybody know? This is not the first time we've heard tov. Anybody recall when we heard tov? I'm really getting Bible nerdy now.
Way back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. All right. Beginning. In the beginning, he looked back 7 different times. Oh, it's Tov, right? And he's going to put him in Eden, and there's going to be a tree in the middle that you can't eat. It's the knowledge of Tov and Ra. Ra is like calamity or evil. Tov would therefore be good. And so now what we see is a baby has been born, and he's described very descriptively in the very exact terms that God is going to use over and over and over and over again in the opening pages of Genesis, right? So we are to kind of we're kind of being led into believing what about Moses before we ever know his story.
He's special.
Yeah, he's special. There seems to be a little hint of like God doing something here, obviously. We just sped from 400 years down to a slow trot here, a matter of hours. So that's another hint that, okay, this is a big deal. But we need to discover who this kid is. Now, what we see is he's meant for death until what occurs? What occurs after he's already put in the basket and in the water?
Somebody sees him.
Yep, who? Okay, this is all review. Pharaoh's daughter. Yep, and there's another person there as well, and his sister. We'll get into that in a minute. And what does Pharaoh's daughter say?
Ooh, a baby.
Verse 7. Somebody tell me, what does she begin by saying? Or what does the sister begin to say to Pharaoh's daughter first?
Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women?
Okay. So that opening statement is you're meant to, once you've read this 1,000 times and you've meditated on it, and this isn't the first time you've heard it, she makes a statement and you're supposed to giggle a little bit because this is going to be a wink to something that'll come later. What does she start out by saying?
Shall I go?
Yeah, shall I go? This is going to be a theme that we're going to see all throughout Exodus. And what does Pharaoh's daughter, his own seed, how does she respond? Go. Now, I wonder if there's going to be another time in which Moses will stand before someone and say, let us go, or shall we go into the wilderness and worship a certain amount of days? Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. And what is Pharaoh going to respond with? No, absolutely not, which is going to be a hint and a theme as we continue. Of course, we get to the big Charlton Heston phrase. What does he declare? Let my people go. So this whole going thing is going to be a big theme over and over and over again. Chapter 2, verse 7, may I go? Chapter 2, verse 8, go. Chapter 2, verse 9, we're going to see it again. What does chapter 2, verse 9 say? Anybody catch it yet? Yeah. So, chapter 2, verse 9 says, take this child, right? And again, in English, that's what it says. Okay? However, in Hebrew, it is, say it? It is, yeah, make this child go. It is, make him go away and nurse him for me, and I will give you wages for this. Of course, later on, we're going to get let them go, let us go. We're going to see go away, and we're going to see go worship Yahweh over and over and over again, just in the first half of this book. And so we're getting the go, go, go theme. Let them go, see them go, let them go. All this over and over again. The last thing I want to hit here is the name. So we're given the first name of this interesting little Tov baby boy who was born to a Hebrew and is joining an Egyptian family through basically adoption. And what does she name him? Moses. And what does Moses mean? Mm-hmm. Now, I think the term is an imperfect imperative, I think is what it is. It's actually kind of tricky. It's like she's saying, I drew out, or he drew out of the water is kind of how that works, I think is the term. Which will be, of course, a hint. Moses' name will be a hint to something that Yahweh will do later on in the narrative for the Israelites. It is the he draws out. He drew them out of the water. Let me ask you this. What is it about this name that would be very strange for Pharaoh's daughter to constantly call him as he's growing up?
It's disobedient almost.
Yeah, it's a reminder almost of a time that she was disobedient to Pharaoh's own decrees. So his whole life becomes this representation of this moment where Pharaoh's daughter made this decision, which is interesting. Now that is in Hebrew. In Hebrew, his name Moshe sounds just like to draw out of. But what's awesome here is that there's an Egyptian side to his name. His name works in Egyptian as well. And we know that because why would it be weird for Pharaoh's daughter, it would be weird. I'll just make it. It would be weird for Pharaoh's daughter to name this kid a Hebrew name. Right?
Yeah.
So that should be a clue number one. Like, that doesn't make any sense until you look at the name of Moses in Egyptian. And the name of Moses in Egyptian means son of? Question mark. I wonder if that's going to be a big deal here in these next couple chapters. Now, Moses in the Egyptian is usually attached to a deity. So they would, if Ra Mosé or something like that, Ra Moses would kind of fit into that. Like an Egyptian deity would be tagged onto the Moses portion of the name for, Pharaoh or somebody else who would take on that name. Again, that's going to be important. It's going to be hinting in the Egyptian thing where we're going to discover whether or not Moses, whose God Moses is going to be attached to, or he's going to take on his own. Any questions about that? I just think those are fun tidbits. So, okay. Now what we're going to see is he's going to flee. So somebody read verse 11 through, just go ahead and go through 22 for me.
One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew on one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" He answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well.
Okay, stop. I actually do want to stop there. Okay, so what kind of things stand out? What'd you notice? What'd you hear? What questions you got? This is a big deal.
Well, I want to know who ratted him out.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Never say who saw it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yep.
It says one of his people.
Oh, whose people? And who were they?
The Hebrew.
So, yeah, that's a good question. How did Moses know that he was one of his people that was being hurt? So, in other words, it says that Moses saw an Egyptian specifically beating one of his people, right? And so he decides to stand up for his people. Yay, Moses is a Hebrew. He just got placed in the wrong house or the right house. I don't know. So that's good, right? That's okay. Identity crisis over. Son of the Hebrews, right? Good. Problem is, what do we see next? Oh, also, never mind. Okay, continue. What do we see happen next? He comes out the next day.
2 Hebrews were fighting.
Two Hebrews are fighting, and what's their statement?
Who made you a prince
Yeah, next.
and judge over us?
Okay, that's going to also become a big deal here later. Who is going to make Moses a prince and a judge over them and the Egyptians? That'll be interesting. But what's the next statement?
Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?
Oh, yours says the Egyptian. I like that. Anybody else say something different?
Who appointed you to be a prince and a judge?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Never mind. We're not going to go there. I'm taking it back. So what we're seeing here is the son of the Hebrew people. How are the Hebrew people reacting back to Moses? Yeah, they resent him, right? Because who is a judge and a prince over the Hebrew people right now? The Egyptians, right? And so there seems to be some sort of a conflict here because now the Hebrew people don't seem to accept him as Hebrew. What we're going to see in his next move, Moses' next move, is do you think the Egyptian people are going to continue to accept him as an Egyptian once they find out what he did to the other Egyptian? No. Now, just for fun, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, but as you're meditating through this throughout the week, think about this through the eyes of the Cain and Abel narrative. And watch how the author is really playing with these themes of the brother and the favorited brother and the blessed brother and the one who kills the other. And there's a lot of situations there, and you're supposed to be questionable about like how you're feeling about what Moses has done up to this point. But the thing that we're mostly supposed to see is 3 different times we're going to see strike, struck, beating, the same scenario, which again hints back to the Cain narrative. He struck him with the rock. He struck him in the field, killed Abel. This is not good, and now Moses is going to continue his identity crisis. Keep that in mind. He's going to go and escape out of Egypt. He's going to leave, and he's going to go to the land of Midian, and he's going to sit down by a well. Somebody now read 16 through 22.
Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flocks. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them, and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and even drew water for us, and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land."
So what things stood out to you?
Things happen around the well.
Yeah? Yeah. It's like the watering hole, right? Yeah. Yeah, the water jug. Okay. What else?
He went from being in the courts of Pharaoh,
Hmm.
to the top, now to dealing with shepherds and being
Mm-hmm.
associated with shepherds would be the lowest.
Yep.
So he's had a shift in position.
Yep. Yep. Say what you said.
They call him an Egyptian.
Yeah. Oh. Is he Hebrew or is he Egyptian? That's what we're trying to figure out, right? Okay, so they called him Egyptian. What else?
He got married.
Okay. Oh, it's a love story. We got a meet cute here, right?
7 daughters.
Yeah, 7 daughters. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Almost sounds like a parable at some point.
It kind of does, yeah.
In the movie, he got to pick which daughter. The ugly one.
He took the ugly one. That's why it stood out to you. You idiot.
And he's in a foreign land.
He's in a foreign land, yep. Okay, this is where it gets fun. I gave you homework last week. Did anybody happen to just even glance at that homework? I know some of y'all weren't here.
The well,
Mm-hmm.
the well is repeated throughout the New Testament, the meetings at the well.
Mm-hmm.
Things
Yeah.
that happen at the well.
Yep. Yep. What specific things tend to happen at the well?
When
Reagan, go ahead.
In John chapter 4.
Nope, don't go there yet. Thank you, Reagan, for letting me yell at you. I haven't done that in a long time.
Some type of meeting happened?
Yeah.
Somebody's.
We actually, this is up to this point. This is the 3rd time we've actually heard this meeting at a well narrative. Anybody remember the other 2?
Was Joseph been in a while?
Genesis chapter 29
Wasn't
and
Joseph
Genesis
been in
chapter
a while?
24. Somebody go to Genesis chapter 24 for me, and somebody go to Genesis chapter 29 for me. If you're there and you're willing to read, just say aye. Okay. Which one are you at?
24.
Okay, you're at 24. I want you to read, where is it? Verse, I think it's 45. Let me make sure I'm not missing it.
It's probably his first time to a well.
If you don't mind, start reading verse 42 through... Just go through 49 at the moment.
When it came to the spring today, I said, "O Lord, God of my master Abraham, if you will please grant success to the journey on which I have come. See, I am standing beside the spring. If a maiden comes out to draw water, and I say to her, please let me drink a little water from your jar. And if she says to me, drink, and I'll draw water for your camel too. Let her be the one the Lord has chosen for my master's son." Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebecca came out with a jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water. And I said to her, "Please give me a drink." She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, "Drink, and I will water your camel too." So I drank, and she watered the camel also. I asked her, whose daughter are you?" She said, "The daughter of Betrothal, son of Nahor, whom Michal bore to him." Then I put a ring on her nose and a bracelet on her arm, and I bowed down and worshipped the Lord. I praise the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to get to the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell him, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn.
Okay, so you get, keep that in mind. Somebody read 29, 1 through 12.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of people at the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large. And when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherd would roll the stone from the mouth of the well, and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where do you come from? They said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? They said, We know him. He said to them, It is well with him. They said, It is well, and see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep. He said, Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them. They said, We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flocks of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father.
Okay, so thinking through all 3 of these narratives that we just spoke about, anybody notice any similarities? What are some of those that you noticed?
Found their wife at the well,
Yeah, so they somehow find a wife at the well, yeah?
put a ring in her nose.
I had a feeling that was going to stand out, yeah. That would have been a great engagement, right? Well, it's better than just immediately kissing her, non-consensual maybe? I don't know, he just kissed her, okay. Any other note?
Watering the flocks.
Okay, so there's watering flocks. There seem to be shepherds that seem to be... okay. Now, we didn't read all of both of these narratives. There's many, many more. But if you go down, I challenge you to do this, and you start to pay attention to all of the elements that continue on in these scenes. There are 12 total that make up what's called the betrothal well type scene. This is a scene that's going to be used over and over again and in multiple ways. I will send this out on Remind. I'll send these pictures out on Remind. Don't freak out. What we see in the betrothal elements, this type scene, is, number one, they're all always traveling to a foreign land. If you go back and you read those narratives, you're going to see that. Number two, they're going to meet a woman at a well. Someone is going to draw water. There's going to be some sort of a gift or a service offered. If you're thinking about serving 7 years for Rachel, if you're thinking about the ring, there you go, there's a gift there. And if you pay attention to the Moses narrative, you'll find that. We're going to see some sort of a bonding to the family. There's going to be a revealing of his identity. I'm so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, your cousin, ultimately. There's going to be a greeting from the family and an invite back to the home. And there's going to be the betrothal that will be arranged. The groom will then live with the bride's family for a while, and the groom will return to his place of origin, and the groom will be received by his own family, and he will then reside there. Every single one of those will be found in all three of those narratives, except in the Exodus, there's one single one missing. And you'll never guess which one's missing. Nope, not yet. That does happen. It's all part of it, yep.
Doesn't reside there.
Huh?
Doesn't reside.
He does reside there for a little bit, yep. I'll give you a hint. We've been looking at this theme for the first 2 chapters.
It doesn't reveal that.
Number 6. You see a variation here, and what you see is Moses does not reveal who he is or where he's from or what family he's a part of. The implication comes from the people who claim that he is Egyptian. So that should be hint number 1. When you look at all these, you go, oh, we're still at an identity crisis here. We're still not quite figuring out what's happening. But I told you this is where the fun comes. Now, Reagan, tell me the 4th and final betrothal scene. What book were you just talking about?
In John chapter 4.
John chapter 4. Now, John chapter 4, go ahead and turn there. What is John chapter 4 about? Famous story.
Jesus meets a woman at the well.
Yeah. And who a specific woman. What's the specific woman? Say it.
Samaritan.
A Samaritan. Right. So let's see if we see any of these 12 things in this narrative. John chapter 4, starting in verse 1. Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee, and he had to pass through Samaria. He came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Hint, 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 hint. This is a winking moment right there. A specific well we're going to be going to. I wonder if that well was talked about yet. Okay, Jacob's well was there, in case you didn't just read. So Jesus, wearied from his journey, was sitting beside a well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw the water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, asks for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For the Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. I love that. I can't wait for the study in John. I love all the interjections by the author. Like, hint, hint, by the way, this is what's going on. Jesus, verse 10, Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God, or if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get the living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob?" Hint, 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 hint. I wonder if we should pay attention to something that occurs in Jacob. Okay. "He gave us the well," hint, hint, "and drank from it himself, as did his sons and the livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him the spring of water welling up to eternal life." And the woman said, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water." Okay, let's stop there real quick. Have we met any of these type scene pictures yet? Which ones? Okay, travel into a foreign land. Yep. There's going to be a water. I heard somebody say something. The gift of living water is offered. Yeah. Anything else? What do we know doesn't happen here? What is this type scene specific to? Like all this meeting a woman at a well. What does it always end in? A marriage. What do we know doesn't happen?
Marriage.
Okay, so you should be questioning this, right? You should be questioning this whole marriage thing, right? Okay, so let's just continue. We still have revealing identity, greeting and inviting home, betrothal arranged, groom lives with the bride's family, groom returns to the place of origin, groom receives his own family, and he resides there. Okay, Jesus. Verse 16, Jesus said to her, "Call your husband and come here." So this should, if you meditate on Scripture a lot, you go, "Oh, she has a husband." Well, it's not Jesus, so we know this is a variation. So, okay, what does that mean? I wonder how this is working. The woman answered him and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband." Dun, dun, dun. "What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." Oh, we should figure out who this guy is, right? Is he a prophet? I don't know. Like another prophet that we're about to see meet a woman at a well. I wonder. Okay. "I perceive that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming, for neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know. Salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming." Interjection, he who is called Christ. "When he comes, he will tell us all things." Jesus said to you, "I who speak to you am he." Did we fulfill another portion here? Yeah, he just revealed his identity, and he did it in such a magnificent way. Any idea how that magnificent way will just so happen to relate to a story that we seem to be studying the book of? Say it. I heard it. Yeah. Moses is going to figure out the identity of the one, the Father of God, the God of the Hebrews, and the God of the Egyptians ultimately. I am. So Jesus just... Huh? Yeah. So we're still missing a couple things, though. So there's no betrothal arranged, right? Still missing that. Groom is going to live with the bride's family. Well, I don't know how that's going to fit. The groom is going to return to his place of origin. Groom is going to be received by his own family, and then he's going to reside there. So we are missing and a greeting and an invite to the home. So let's just continue on. Just then his disciples came back, and they marveled what he was talking about with a woman. But no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking to her?" So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" And they went out of the town, and were coming to him. Meanwhile, so she goes back to the family, right? This is all part of that. She goes back to the family. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, asking, "Rabbi, eat." Oh, there's a meal. There's a meal. Think about Exodus. "Come, bring the Egyptian here so that he may eat bread." Hint, hint. He may eat bread of the living God. Sorry. But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you don't know about." And his silly little disciples, they said to one another, "Has someone brought him something to eat?" Jesus said to him, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do you not say that there are yet 4 months, and here comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes, see the fields are white for harvest already. The one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life, and the sower and the reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered their labor." Okay, at this point, many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me all that I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him, "Won't you dwell with us and stay here?" Just 2 days, And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this indeed is the Savior of the world." After 2 days, he departed for Galilee. For Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his, where? Hometown. So as you begin to look at this type scene, and you start to look at John chapter 4, there are some incredible things that are being taught to us, and we don't even realize it. The first of which is there seems to be a lack of something that still is an underlying issue with this whole betrothal type scene, and what is that lack of? What does not occur very obviously?
Betrothal.
A betrothal, right? Or is there? Right? What do we find out about the Samaritan? She was, yeah. But what is she not now? Yeah, she's not married. So she's available. In fact, she's available but also living in an adulterous life. I wonder if that sounds like a prophet that will be told to go and marry the prostitute, who will also be a representative of Israel. So the implication here is that she's available and somebody could marry her, and who is this somebody that she just so happens to meet at a well? Jesus, a Jew, a rabbi, a man. This is incredibly painful for someone to hear. His own people. Because what Jesus is doing here is he's completely breaking down the standards of what the Messiah is supposed to do. The Messiah is supposed to come and be this political ruler for the Jews and bring peace and make the Jews great in the nations and in the world. But what he's doing is he's betrothing himself to the Gentiles. He even brings up the salvation part. If you remember, talking about the two different mountains, there's a reason behind that. Samaritans worshipped at a different mountain. They believed that was the true holy place, and they only believed in a certain amount of the Old Testament. They didn't even believe in the Messiah, which is an interesting thing to note when you look at the woman's response. But it's just so happened that the woman happens to recognize Jesus as somebody that even the Jews, his own family, won't recognize. And suddenly what you're seeing is this identity crisis that Moses went through is going through with Jesus, but not because Jesus is unaware of his identity, but because everyone else is. And they're all on that path of discovery through the same scenario that we're going to see with the Exodus and the wilderness and all these themes. But what Jesus is doing is he's saying that his betrothal will be to the Gentiles. But it'll be through his family, his own people, that this was able to occur. And he cannot go back to his hometown. Why? Why can he not go back to his hometown?
He's not accepted.
Yeah, they're going to kill him, his own family. And then suddenly you go back to Moses, and you're looking at that whole second chapter again, and you're seeing Moses kills an Egyptian, but his own people are like, who are you over us? Who are you to be a prince over us? The judge over us. Meanwhile, Jesus will be that person, right? His own people won't accept him. He doesn't belong to any house, right? He's not accepted. His own people want to kill them, which will be the macro, the big picture of what we saw in chapter 2 or chapter 4 of Genesis with Cain and Abel and the brotherly killing, right? He won't be received by his own family, but he will eventually return to his own origin. This is why it's important to not just read just the particular passages, but when you read those passages, understanding that it's all incredibly well connected, that's where you discover more about who God actually is and what Jesus was doing. He wasn't just meeting some random woman. He wasn't even just meeting some random woman just to kind of freak people out because he's talking to a woman and a Samaritan woman. Jews don't have anything to do with the Samaritans, right? He was doing that. But clearly, you can see that he's making like much larger, meaningful, impactful statements. Last couple of minutes here, just want to open up for any questions or clarifications or thoughts. Yeah?
Just a thought, this whole situation changes the way I look at it. It's equivalent to me of him being born of a virgin.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And
Yeah.
now he's married to a woman with 5 husbands.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like that whole impossible possible.
There's so much here. I'm actually convinced. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Okay. I think, there's a whole bunch of incredible stuff going on here. And actually, every which way you look at the John 4 narrative, depending on if you're looking at it from a Samaritan standpoint or if you look at it from a Jewish standpoint, like his disciples' standpoint, you get something completely different out of it. And what's incredible is how would his disciples how did they react to him speaking to the Samaritan woman? Yeah, they're not a big fan of her, right? And then if they were to find out not only that she was a woman, but also what was she guilty of? Adultery, right? She's cheating on all kinds of people. She ain't even married to anybody, right? How dare that disgusting Samaritan woman? Until you look at it through the eyes of that prophet who happens to marry a prostitute who's an adulterer, and that prostitute is going to represent who? Israel. Why? What has Israel done? Yeah. They have married themselves to many other gods and are completely unfaithful and are no longer married to the one. And because of that, the one will come and betroth himself to the Gentiles and out from the Jews. And so what's happening is that suddenly the judgmental part from the disciples, suddenly when they were to look at the scenario, they're going, oh no, that's what we're doing. And then you take it forward and you find out that his own people are going to be the ones who will strike Jesus. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, where does it say where he got his Hebrew values from? Is this from his mother bringing him up?
Moses? You talking about Moses?
Moses.
We're not told anything about his upbringing. We go from 0 to whatever age, 30 or something. Yeah.
So we're left just thinking that it was probably from...
Well, he's raised until he's weaned under the Hebrew people. And then the thought is that he's raised with Pharaoh in Pharaoh's house at that point.
At what point, it's like, what point does he realize that he's Hebrew?
That's a great question.
Is it...
We're not told any of these things. There's obviously a reason where he believes he's a Hebrew just because of he sees the Egyptians striking one of his own people. But there obviously is also a reason why the Midianites would have thought he was Egyptian. And I think the point is less about the details on the why and more about the who is he. Ultimately, I really think that's the point of this, is who is he, and soon we'll discover whom he is.
I'm sure after he spoke to God, he knew it was him.
Yeah, right.
But is that just right or wrong, what the distinguish between what is right and wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying a good heart.
Yeah.
It seems fair around.
Yeah. Unless you look at it from the Egyptian standpoint. Not to muddy the waters a little bit, but
But those
But yeah.
people.
Yeah.
He's a shepherd to Israel.
Mm.
To the nation.
Right. And he will, that actually will be, that actually is another thing that in that when he meets his wife, he is going to he's going to act the same way that he will act for his people when he leads them out. So there's another connection if you go back and look at that. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or questions?
There's a time when God's going to kill him because he...
We'll get there. Don't get ahead of me. It gets iffy. Yeah.
Adam, a whole different way of looking at this, we learned in one of our ladies' Bible studies, and that's where the Jewish people had an honor-shame system
Yeah.
back in those days, and women were the lowest of low.
Mm-hmm.
And not only was she a single woman, but she was a prostitute.
Yep.
And so Jesus at that time took her, named her sin to where he could lift her up from that. And then he honored her in that he actually taught her some true basic theology there in the chapters 21 through 24.
Yeah.
Giving her true doctrine there. And that raised her up in such a beautiful way that the Jewish people didn't understand. That's why the disciples said, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, why are you talking to her?" And that was a beautiful, beautiful thing that was brought out from that, which is totally different, a whole different way of taking off on it.
I'll say this next statement very carefully because I know it will ruffle feathers, but it's very interesting that thank God the woman went and preached to the town. And that's all I'll say there. Because I don't want to get into any of those debates. It's a pattern that we've seen since Exodus here. We're watching. The men are expected to be the issue. Meanwhile, the women seem to be the one through whom God's going to use at that point and here at this point.
But only Jesus would do that. Only he will use the women. You know, and it's so beautiful how he takes the woman and uses her when she's shamed by culture.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Anything else? Past time now, so. All right, let me pray. If you guys want to talk afterwards, we can talk. Father God, thank you so much for the time in your word. Thank you for the opportunity just to dive deeper into it and discover more about who you are. Father, I pray that you'll be with us this week. Continue to develop in us a desire to want to get into it, to meditate on it, to look at these things from a different perspective than just the overall easy reading of it. Father, because we know that's where, in the nook and the crannies and the jots and the tittles, that's where we get to discover more and more about who you are and how amazing you are. Thank you for the gift of this word. I pray that you'll be with us this week. Keep us warm. keep us protected. We ask these things in your name. Amen.